Hi everyone, Cam here from Yes Auto, and today we're going to talk about Polestar. Now you may know Polestar from the Polestar 2, that electric car that comes really close to rivaling the Tesla Model 3. Well, this is the thing that started it all off, the Polestar 1. And it's not an electric car, it's an exclusive hybrid super sports GT thing. And today we're going to drive it because they've nearly sold out of them and I wanted to have a go and see what all the fuss was about. So today we're going to review the Polestar 1. But before I get into this video, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more awesome car reviews just like this one. Now, before I get into the design, there's a few elephants in the room I need to address. The first thing is price. If you look at the Polestar 2, it's about £50,000. The Polestar 1, a four-seater coupe, is £139,000 for a car most of you have probably never heard of. The second thing is it looks a hell of a lot like a Volvo, and that's because Polestar is an offshoot of Volvo. It's essentially their electric, zero-emission, eco-friendly brand. So a lot of people think it's pretty crazy to spend £139,000 on what is essentially a hybrid Volvo. But we're going to see if it's worth the money. Now the good thing is, I think Volvos look stunning, and I think the Polestar 1 looks incredible. This front end is so minimalist, but it almost reminds me of old Aston Martins from the early 2000s. The designs on the surface were quite boring, but they're utterly timeless. And I think it's the same thing with the Polestar 1. This really is a very good looking car. Then we've got the lights, which are in the shape of a T, but that's not a T for Polestar, that's for Thor's hammer. A little bit of a nod to Norse mythology. Of course, Polestar and Volvo are Swedish brands. Now, to the side of the car, we've got these gorgeous 21-inch wheels. Now, this is the only option, but you can actually get them in different colors. So we've got the diamond cut black and silver, but you can also get black on black and matte black. I prefer the look of these ones though. They are really nice. Then we go on to the beautiful roofline. Just look at how it slopes off towards the back of the car. I think this is such a good looking car. The only thing I will say is though is the boot kind of slopes downwards ever so slightly, and I think if it had a bit more of a rake design at the back, it might be a little bit more aggressive, but I think this is pretty damn close to perfection. Now, I've heard a lot of people say the back end is really boring. I completely disagree. I think this is actually one of the best parts of the Polestar 1. Just look at how fat the arches are. It's so muscly and mean. Just so surprising to come from a brand like Volvo. We've also got, they look like twin exhausts, but they're actually quad exhausts because they're split down the center. And you know what? They are completely real. Just look at this key. A key for a car costing £139,000, and it's this black plastic monolith. It's the same one that you get on the Polestar 2, and even for that, it felt pretty damn cheap. Anyway, I need it to get into the boot. And speaking of the boot, when it opens, there we go. We have 143 litres back here, which is only a little bit bigger than what you get on the Mazda MX-5 that we reviewed recently. In fact, you can watch a video of that by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner if you want to compare and contrast two completely different cars. Anyway, it's smaller than what you get on rivals. You've got a much bigger boot on a Continental GT, and I think you would struggle to fit a suitcase in there, a big one anyway. So maybe a couple of overnight bags if you want a weekend away somewhere. And it also takes up, we've got the charging cables back here too, and a first aid kit, and that takes up quite a lot of space as well. But what is cool is that you have this exposed kind of glass cabinet back here, which shows you the electrical gubbins of the car. It's not quite as exciting as seeing the V12 in the back of a Lamborghini, but I still think it's pretty cool, I guess. Where things get really interesting is under the bonnet. So what we've got is a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. Sounds pretty dull, right? Well, it's actually twin charged, meaning that it's got a turbocharger for low down torque and a supercharger for further up the rev range. Now, for an example, twin charging was done on things like Group B rally cars back in the mid-1980s, like the Lancia Delta S4, real rally-bred monsters. Share something in common with the Polestar 1. Now, that's actually connected up to an electric motor that sits between the engine and the gearbox, and it sends power to the front wheels. And at the back of the car are a pair of electric motors that send power to the rear wheels. And combined, they produce 601 brake horsepower to all 4 wheels. How nuts is that? But as we go into a little bit later, when on the road, you can actually change up the power system so that you either have a combination of the 2 systems, or you can go rear-wheel drive only with electric power. Now, it's also a plug-in hybrid, so it means that it can be run on electric power alone. So there are 2 battery packs in here that combined have a total capacity of 34 kilowatt hours. And Polestar claims it has a maximum range of 130 kilometers, which is 80 miles, on electric power. That is really impressive. You don't find that on many plug-in cars today at all. So you've kind of got the range of a low-down electric car with the performance of a GT. What a cool powertrain. Now, with the hybrid system in its most powerful configuration, this thing will go from 0 to 62 in 4.1 seconds and go all the way on to a limited top speed of 155 miles an hour. And if you go in electric power alone, Now, with the hybrid system in its most powerful setting, this thing will go from 0 to 62 in 4.1 seconds, which is seriously fast, and then go on all the way to a limited top speed of 155 miles an hour. And if you swap over to electric power alone, that comes down to 100, but that's still pretty damn quick. Now, something I wanted to point out earlier, and we mentioned on the Polestar 2 review, is that the Polestar 2 in performance mode came with Öhlins dampers. Now, these are seriously sporty race spec style suspension system that can actually be adjusted, and they come as standard on the Polestar 1. And you can see them as these gold caps either side of the engine bay. Now, what's really cool about them is that they're manually adjustable, so you can soften or stiffen the ride if you want to. So let's say if it's a Saturday morning and you want to go out for a brisk drive, you could go, I'd like a slightly stiffer suspension setup today. You could pop the bonnet and tweak your Öhlins dampers. The only problem is, though, is that that's for the front of the car. You get the same system on the rear, but you can't just pop the boot and adjust it there. You'd have to jack the car up and manually do it, which is a bit pointless. As you can see, I am on the left-hand side of the car and not the right-hand side. And that's not because this car has been imported from Sweden, it's because the Polestar 1 is only available as a left-hand drive car, which is, again, a little bit of a pain when you're spending nearly £140,000. I get it if it's £1 million supercar and they're only making 5 of them, but they're making 1,500 versions of the Polestar 1, and I kind of wish it was in right-hand drive. Anyway, the inside of the Polestar 1 is a bit of a mixed bag. If you've never driven a Volvo before, you'll probably think it's very lovely in here. And that's because it is. I've got leather on the center console, leather on the dashboard, leather on the door here, and I've also got some metal highlights around here and proper carbon fiber trim in here as well to give it that sporty feel. However, if you've been in a Volvo, you'll get in here and go, this is just a Volvo. Pretty much all of it has been lifted from Volvo's higher end products. So it doesn't feel all that special. Again, for a car costing nearly £140,000. But I'm going to look past that because I think it looks really great in here. It's got a really nice looking interior and it feels as though it's been really well put together. Now, one thing I do like about it is this infotainment system. Now, it's a portrait style screen, but it's running Google's Android, so it feels much better than pretty much all infotainment screens on the market. I would say the only thing that feels better than this is the one that comes in the Polestar 2, which is a serious improvement over this one. But I've just spent quite a bit of time in the Mustang Mach-E and also the Volkswagen ID.4. These are top, very latest electric cars, and they don't feel nearly as good on the infotainment side as this thing does. Again, it's just a bit of disappointment that this doesn't come with the latest version and they can't update it. Now that's paired up with a virtual cockpit that isn't quite as high resolution as the infotainment screen, but it still looks really good. Gives you all the information that you need. You can see your sat nav on there if you want to as well. I can see my charge and the power that I'm using, and it also changes. So if you're using the combustion engine, it'll show you your revs, and if you then go into the electric mode, it'll show you how much power you're using. We've also got little bits of storage in here. This is a grand tourer after all, so you will be spending some time on the road and will need somewhere to put a drink. So if I slide this back, I've got a pair of cup holders. They are a little bit useless though. So I do have a can of Coke somewhere, and I was driving along and I put it in there, and as soon as I turned a corner, it fell out. So maybe just put smaller drinks in there or heavier ones. We've also got some storage underneath the armrest. We've got a little tray down here with a couple of USB chargers, and there's also somewhere to put the key as well, because you certainly won't want to look at it. Glove compartment is nice and big actually, and on the left hand side there's a tiny little compartment which perhaps you could put some sunglasses in when you're cruising around in the summer in your very limited edition Polestar 1. Getting in the back of the Polestar 1 can only be described as a right faff. So the first thing you need to do is disconnect the seat belt. Then the second thing, we have to press a button on the back of the chair to move it forwards, even though it's moving back. This takes many minutes. Feel free to fast forward if you want to. Nearly there! Okay, now it's ready for me to get in. So I have to fold my leg in like that, and now, yeah, I am now in the Polestar 1. Now, to get myself comfortable, I've got to press the button on the back of the chair again and wait a few more years for the chair to move back. Okay, it's getting a bit tight. It's getting a bit tight. No. Okay, yeah, I can't. I am now completely crushed. So I am just under 6 foot, and well, I'm struggling with headroom. Headroom is non-existent, and legroom is being completely crushed. So the only thing that really should go in the back here are either very small children or shopping bags. Let's go drive this thing. Polestar 1 really is something different when you go out on the road, because although it's a hybrid, the electric element of this car is so much more than any other hybrid car out there, really, that it doesn't really feel like you're driving something with a combustion engine that's assisted by electric power. It feels pretty much like a fully electric car. And even when I put my foot down, you hear a whine from the electric motor more than you do the engine spooling up, which is really amazing. It just creates a really unique driving experience. This feels unlike anything else I've driven. So I've got 5 different driving modes. So all-wheel drive is basically what it says. Then I've got pure, which is the electric motors only, powering the rear wheel. So essentially it's rear wheel drive. Then hybrid, which is the kind of the tamest, easiest setting of what Polestar suggests you would use for every day. You've then got power, which is basically full power, full performance. It's only going to come at the cost of efficiency and battery usage. And then there's individual, so you can set up your own profiles. So I've got it in hybrid at the moment. So that means we're still using the petrol engine as well as the electric motors, but you really wouldn't know. The only time you really hear the engine actually working is when you put your foot down and you hear a whine from the supercharger, which is so cool. It's supercharged cars are really rare today. Then I can put it into pure, which is just complete silence. And it's really interesting because the dials on the instrument cluster change, so you don't get a rev counter anymore. It just shows you basically how much power you're using. And it doesn't actually feel all that different to the hybrid system. The engine is that quiet in hybrid mode that most of the time you just feel like you're driving an electric car. If I go into power, however, then the motor becomes much noisier. And I think they pump in a bit of a fake sound because it sounds a little bit V80, a little bit more than, it sounds a bit beefier than just a regular 2-litre 4-cylinder motor. So what's also really different about the Polestar 1 is that on every level it feels like a Grand Tourer. It's not a supercar or an out-and-out sports car. It feels like a GT. And when it weighs 2.3 tons, it's not exactly the most nimble thing on the planet. But with those Öhlins dampers, adjustable Öhlins dampers, there is a responsiveness and a kind of sportiness to it that I really wasn't expecting. I guess as well, because the batteries are nice and low, you've got a really low center of gravity. So although there's a lot of weight, it's kept really low, which is exactly what you want for really good handling. And that's backed up by a superb steering system. This feels really very good. And it comes as no surprise really, because we drove the Polestar 2. The steering on that was absolutely fantastic. It's got a beautiful weight to it, so you've got an idea of what the road surface is doing. You've got a lovely amount of feedback. But it's quite light and really responsive. So it just makes the car feel a lot more agile and nimble than its stats would suggest. But it's still not razor sharp. It's still not supercar sharp. And I think that's the odd thing, because I'm on a twisty road at the moment and it is bumpy. And there's a certain stiffness through the car, probably because of those Öhlins dampers, that means that it's not as comfortable as a GT should be. A Bentley Continental is more comfortable than this. Of course, the range in this thing is seriously impressive as well. 80 miles from a single charge is really very good. One of the best out there for a plug-in hybrid. And it just means the car is adaptable. It means that it can kind of meet any demand that you want. If you want to drive it on electric power throughout the week on a commute, fine. You find a great road, whack the combustion engine on and let it rip. So 3 things I like about the Polestar 1 and 3 things I don't like. The first thing is the performance. It is so quick. I absolutely love that. It just feels so frigging fast. The second, the steering is so good. It's just so razor sharp. And the third thing is I can enjoy it all day and barely use up any fuel or battery. And I love that. 3 things I don't like. 1, it can feel a little bit unsettled on a twisty road. The second thing is this cabin is pretty much all Volvo. And that's not a bad thing, but that brings me on to the third thing, which is the price. At £139,000, it is too expensive. I mean, for what you get, it is a very, very expensive car. And if you're spending 139 grand, I would want something quite a bit more premium than what we have in here. So the Polestar 1 looks great. It's very expensive, but I don't care. It's a great car, and I would love one.